I'm Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, 27, and yesterday my sister Emma sent me what appeared to be a birthday gift box at my military base overseas. When I excitedly showed it to my commander before opening it, his face went white, and he immediately called the bomb squad, saying that's not a gift, that's a weapon. What I didn't know was that Emma had been secretly recruited by a terrorist cell targeting military families, and the innocent birthday package contained enough explosive material to level half the base and kill hundreds of soldiers, including myself. Think you can predict how family betrayal intersects with national security? Hit that like button if you believe trust should never be given blindly. Subscribe for more shocking military family drama, and let's dive into how sometimes the people closest to you become the most dangerous enemies you'll ever face. Growing up as military brats in the Martinez family meant understanding discipline, loyalty, and service to country as fundamental values that shaped every aspect of our childhood. Our father, Colonel Roberto Martinez, had served 3 tours of duty before transitioning to a desk job at the Pentagon, while our mother, Captain Elena Martinez, worked in military intelligence until her retirement. My younger sister Emma and I were raised with the same principles of duty and honor that had defined our parents' military careers. We understood that serving our country was a privilege and responsibility that required sacrifice, integrity, and unwavering commitment to protecting American values and security. I had followed naturally in our parents' footsteps, joining the Army immediately after college, and working my way up to lieutenant while specializing in logistics coordination for overseas operations. Military life suited my personality and values perfectly. I thrived on structure, clear objectives, and the knowledge that my work contributed to national security and the safety of fellow service members. Emma, however, had chosen a different path. After college, she pursued graduate studies in Middle Eastern Studies and International Relations, expressing interest in diplomatic service and cultural bridge building rather than military careers. Our parents had been supportive of her academic pursuits, viewing her expertise in languages and regional politics as valuable in its own way. Emma has such a sophisticated understanding of complex geopolitical issues, our mother would say with pride during family gatherings. Her research on Middle Eastern cultural dynamics and conflict resolution could be valuable for diplomatic careers or international development work. Emma's academic focus on Middle Eastern studies had led to graduate research abroad, including extended periods in Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey, where she was supposedly conducting thesis research on post-conflict reconstruction and community reconciliation programs. The family was proud of Emma's scholarly achievements and her commitment to understanding different cultures and perspectives. Her fluency in Arabic and her research on regional politics seemed like natural extensions of our family's commitment to service, just in civilian rather than military contexts. Emma is building bridges between cultures, our father would explain to military colleagues who asked about his daughter's careers. Sarah serves through military logistics, and Emma serves through academic research that helps policymakers understand complex regional issues. But during the past year, Emma's communications with our family had become increasingly sporadic and strange. Her emails and phone calls, once regular and detailed, had become brief and evasive. Her explanations for her research activities were vague, and her location seemed to change frequently without clear academic justification. Emma is working on a very sensitive research project, she'd explained, during one of our rare phone conversations. I can't discuss details about my work or location because it involves interviewing people who could be endangered if information about my research became public. The secrecy around her academic work was unusual for Emma, who'd previously been enthusiastic about sharing details of her studies and research findings with family members. Her graduate advisor had apparently given her permission to conduct independent research that didn't require regular check-ins or detailed progress reports. My research has evolved beyond my original thesis proposal, she'd told our parents during a brief video call that showed her in what appeared to be a Middle Eastern location. I am gathering information that could be valuable for understanding how to prevent radicalization and build more stable communities in conflict regions. But there were troubling signs that Emma's research might be more complicated than academic study. Her social media presence had become almost entirely inactive, her financial independence seemed unclear, and her knowledge of current events had become strangely selective, detailed about regional politics, but uninformed about American domestic issues. Emma seems disconnected from home, our mother had mentioned during one of our conversations about family dynamics. She doesn't ask about your military service anymore, doesn't seem interested in family news, and her perspectives on American foreign policy have become quite critical. The criticism of American foreign policy wasn't necessarily concerning by itself. Many academics developed complex perspectives on international relations that differed from military viewpoints. But Emma's criticisms had become increasingly focused on American military operations specifically, with language that seemed more hostile than academically analytical. American military intervention has caused more harm than good in Middle Eastern communities, she'd said during our last conversation before my current deployment. The people I'm working with have stories about how American soldiers have disrupted their lives and destroyed their communities. The comment had been particularly hurtful because it seemed to dismiss the work I and thousands of other service members were doing to protect American interests while supporting stability in complicated regions. Emma's academic perspective appeared to have shifted from understanding different viewpoints to adopting anti-American positions that attacked the military service our family had always valued. But I'd attributed her changed attitudes to academic environment and research immersion rather than anything more sinister. Graduate students often develop strong opinions based on their studies, and Emma's exposure to different perspectives through her research was probably influencing her political views in ways that created tension with our family's military background. What I didn't realize was that Emma's academic research had evolved into something far more dangerous than studying different political perspectives. Her access to sensitive information about American military families, combined with her language skills and regional connections, had made her a valuable target for recruitment by people whose goals went far beyond academic understanding. My current deployment to a forward operating base in Syria had been challenging, but routine, coordinating supply chains and logistics for a multinational peacekeeping operation that was working to stabilize the region while supporting humanitarian efforts. The work was complex and demanding, but it was exactly the kind of assignment that made military service meaningful and important. The base housed approximately 800 personnel from various branches of the American military, along with coalition forces from allied nations working together on stabilization operations. Our mission involved everything from coordinating humanitarian aid distribution to providing security support for civilian reconstruction efforts. As a logistics officer, my responsibilities included managing supply convoys, coordinating with local contractors, and ensuring that our operations had the resources necessary to maintain security and support civilian populations affected by regional conflicts. The work required constant communication with stateside commands, careful planning to prevent security breaches, and detailed knowledge of personnel and operational schedules. Communication with family during deployment was always challenging, but Emma's messages had become particularly strange and concerning over the past few months. Her emails contained questions about base security, personnel numbers, and operational schedules that seemed to go beyond normal family interest in my safety and activities. Sarah, I'm working on a research project about military logistics and humanitarian coordination, she'd written in one recent email. Could you share some information about how supply convoys are scheduled and how security protocols work for protecting humanitarian operations? The questions had seemed like legitimate academic interest at the time. Emma's graduate research focus on post-conflict reconstruction would naturally include interest in how military and humanitarian operations coordinated their efforts. I'd shared general information about logistics challenges and security considerations, being careful not to reveal specific operational details. But Emma's follow-up questions had become increasingly specific and focused on information that seemed more tactically important than academically relevant. How many personnel are typically stationed at forward operating bases like yours? She'd asked in another email. What kinds of security measures are used to protect against external attacks? And how do supply convoys coordinate with local populations to ensure safe passage? The questions were starting to sound more like intelligence gathering than academic research, but I'd continued to provide general responses while avoiding specific details that could compromise operational security. Emma's research on regional reconstruction would logically include interest in how military operations supported civilian stability and safety. Emma's questions about your work are getting pretty detailed, our mother had mentioned during one of our video calls. She seems very focused on understanding military logistics and security procedures. I suppose it's relevant to her research on post-conflict reconstruction. But our mother had also expressed concern about Emma's overall communication patterns and her increasing isolation from family relationships and American connections. Emma doesn't call anymore, rarely responds to emails, and when she does communicate, she seems primarily interested in information about military operations, our mother had observed. It's like she's become focused solely on her research to the exclusion of maintaining family relationships. The pattern was concerning because it suggested that Emma's priorities had shifted in ways that placed her academic work above family connections and personal relationships. Graduate research could be consuming, but Emma's behavior indicated something more than typical academic obsession. I'm worried that Emma's research environment might be influencing her perspectives in ways that are creating distance from her family and her American identity, our father had said during one of our conversations about Emma's changed behavior. Her questions about military operations and her criticism of American foreign policy suggest she's been exposed to viewpoints that are affecting her judgment. The concerns our parents were expressing matched my own observations about Emma's communications. Her interests had become narrowly focused on military operations. Her political perspectives had become increasingly hostile toward American policies, and her personal connections to family members had weakened significantly. But the most troubling aspect was Emma's apparent financial independence despite being a graduate student conducting research in expensive international locations. Graduate students typically struggled financially, especially when conducting extended overseas research, but Emma never mentioned funding concerns or need for financial support from family. How is Emma supporting herself during this extended research period? I'd asked our parents during one conversation. Graduate stipends usually aren't sufficient for international travel and extended overseas living expenses. She mentioned receiving research grants and fellowship funding, our mother had replied, but she's been vague about the sources and terms of her financial support. When we've offered to help with expenses, she's declined and said her funding is adequate. The financial independence was unusual for graduate students, especially those conducting independent research without direct university supervision or regular academic reporting requirements. Emma's ability to travel extensively and live comfortably while pursuing research suggested funding sources that weren't typical academic support. What I didn't understand at the time was that Emma's research activities had evolved into something entirely different from academic study. Her language skills, cultural knowledge, and access to information about American military families had made her valuable to people whose interests had nothing to do with scholarly understanding of post-conflict reconstruction. The birthday package that arrived at our base yesterday was the culmination of months of careful planning by people who'd been using Emma's family connections to gather intelligence about American military operations while positioning her to carry out attacks against the very soldiers she'd grown up respecting and supporting. The package arrived through normal mail delivery channels on Tuesday morning, addressed to Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, with Emma's return address clearly visible on the shipping label. The box was approximately 12 inches square, wrapped in brown paper, with careful attention to presentation that suggested someone had taken time to make it look like a thoughtful birthday gift. "Lieutenant Martinez, you've got a package from home," Sergeant Johnson announced as he distributed the day's mail delivery to personnel throughout the base. "Looks like someone remembered your birthday." My birthday was indeed the following week, and Emma had been reliable about sending gifts during previous deployments, so receiving a package from her seemed perfectly normal and expected. Her previous birthday gifts had included books, specialty foods, and small personal items that reminded me of home during long overseas assignments. I was excited to open the package and see what Emma had chosen for this year's birthday gift. Her packages were always thoughtfully selected and often included items that reflected her travels and cultural experiences during her academic research. Opening gifts from family was one of the few personal pleasures available during deployment. But something about this particular package felt different. The weight distribution seemed unusual, heavier than expected, but with weight concentrated in unexpected areas. The wrapping was more careful and professional than Emma's usual casual gift wrapping style. Most significantly, there was no accompanying card or letter, which was unusual for Emma's typically thoughtful gift presentations. "Lieutenant, before you open that package, let me take a look at it," said Major Thompson, my commanding officer, who'd been observing my excitement about receiving mail from home. Major Thompson had been deployed multiple times and had extensive experience with security protocols related to mail and packages received by personnel at forward operating bases. His concern about the package wasn't immediately obvious to me, but his military experience had apparently triggered some kind of security awareness. "Sir, it's just a birthday gift from my sister," I replied, assuming his caution was routine security consciousness rather than specific concern about this particular package. "Lieutenant, humor me for a moment," Major Thompson said, his tone becoming more serious as he examined the package more carefully. "I want to check a few things before you open this." What followed was the most terrifying 10 minutes of my military career, as Major Thompson's examination of the package revealed characteristics that were consistent with explosive devices rather than birthday gifts. "The weight distribution is wrong for typical gift contents," he observed, gently rotating the box while listening carefully for sounds that might indicate the presence of mechanical components. "The packaging materials are unusually robust for a personal gift, and the shipping information includes some irregularities that concern me." "Sir, what kind of irregularities?" I asked, beginning to feel the first stirrings of genuine alarm about what I'd assumed was a thoughtful birthday surprise from my sister. "The return address is consistent with your sister's previous correspondence, but the shipping origin and routing information suggests this package traveled through locations that aren't consistent with her supposed research activities," Major Thompson explained while continuing his careful examination of the package exterior. The shipping labels and postal markings indicated that the package had been processed through postal facilities in multiple Middle Eastern countries before reaching the mail routing system that delivered packages to our base. The routing was more complex and indirect than typical personal mail from family members. "Lieutenant Martinez, I'm calling the bomb disposal unit to examine this package before anyone opens it," Major Thompson announced, his tone indicating that his concerns had escalated beyond routine caution to genuine alarm about potential security threats. "Sir, you really think my sister would send me a bomb?" I asked, the question sounding absurd even as I asked it, but beginning to feel increasingly plausible given Major Thompson's obvious concerns. "Lieutenant, I think someone used your sister's identity to send you something that isn't a birthday gift," he replied grimly. "Whether your sister sent this package voluntarily, or whether someone else is using her identity for hostile purposes, is something we'll need to investigate." The bomb disposal team arrived within 15 minutes, led by Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, whose expertise in explosive ordnance disposal had been developed through multiple deployments in regions where improvised explosive devices were common threats to military personnel and operations. Lieutenant, we are going to examine this package using non-invasive techniques to determine what's inside before making any decisions about how to proceed, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez explained, as his team set up specialized scanning equipment around the package. The X-ray equipment revealed contents that were definitely not typical birthday gift materials. Instead of books, food, or personal items, the package contained what appeared to be electronic components, chemical materials, and mechanical devices arranged in a configuration that was consistent with improvised explosive devices. Sir, this package contains approximately 2 pounds of explosive material configured with electronic triggering mechanisms, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez reported to Major Thompson after completing his analysis. Opening this package, as intended, would have detonated an explosive device with sufficient force to kill anyone within a 30-foot radius and cause structural damage to surrounding buildings. The revelation that Emma had sent me a bomb disguised as a birthday gift was so shocking that I initially refused to believe the evidence. This had to be a mistake, a misunderstanding, or some kind of elaborate mix-up that would be resolved once we contacted Emma directly and clarified what had happened. Sir, there must be some explanation, I said, my voice shaking with disbelief and fear. Emma would never try to kill me. Someone must have intercepted her package and replaced it with this device, or used her identity to ship something without her knowledge. But Major Thompson's expression suggested that he was considering possibilities that were far more disturbing than package interception or identity theft. Lieutenant Martinez, I need you to understand that this wasn't a random attack or a case of mistaken identity, he said with the gravity of someone delivering life-changing news. This package was specifically addressed to you, shipped using your sister's identity, and contains detailed knowledge about base mail delivery protocols. Whoever sent this had specific intelligence about you, your location, and our security procedures. The implication was becoming unavoidable. Emma had either been coerced into participating in an attack against her own sister, or she had voluntarily joined forces with people who were targeting American military personnel for assassination. The discovery that Emma had sent me an explosive device triggered an immediate investigation by military intelligence, FBI counterterrorism units, and international security agencies that revealed a network of recruitment and radicalization that had been operating for months to target American military families through their own relatives. Lieutenant Martinez, we need to review every communication you've had with your sister over the past 12 months, said Agent Patricia Chen from the FBI's Counterterrorism Division, who'd arrived at the base within hours of the bomb discovery. Emma's activities may be part of a larger operation targeting military personnel through family relationships. The investigation process was surreal and heartbreaking as I provided investigators with months of emails, text messages, and phone call records that documented Emma's transformation from concerned sister conducting academic research to someone gathering intelligence about military operations and personnel. Your sister's questions about base security, personnel numbers, and operational schedules weren't academic research, Agent Chen explained, as we reviewed Emma's communications. These were systematic intelligence gathering efforts designed to support attacks against American military targets. The pattern was undeniable once investigators highlighted the progression of Emma's inquiries. Her initial questions about my work had been general and familial, but they'd gradually become more specific and tactically focused, requesting information that could be used to plan attacks against military installations and personnel. Emma asked about convoy schedules, guard rotations, mail delivery protocols, and personnel movement patterns, I realized as we reviewed her messages chronologically. I thought she was interested in understanding my work, but she was actually gathering intelligence for attack planning. The investigation revealed that Emma had been recruited by a terrorist cell that specialized in identifying and exploiting American military families to gain access to sensitive information and carry out attacks against overseas installations. Your sister's academic research provided perfect cover for extended contact with regional terrorist organizations, explained Colonel Sarah Williams from Military Intelligence. Her language skills, cultural knowledge, and family connections made her an ideal candidate for recruitment as an intelligence asset and eventual operational agent. The recruitment process had been sophisticated and gradual, beginning with legitimate academic contacts, who'd slowly introduced Emma to more radical perspectives and eventually connected her with people whose goals included carrying out attacks against American military targets. Emma's financial independence during her research period was funded by terrorist organizations who were paying her for intelligence about American military families and operations, Agent Chen revealed. Her supposed academic grants were actually payments for information she was providing about you, your work, and your base's security procedures. The betrayal was comprehensive and devastating. Not only had Emma attempted to kill me, but she'd been systematically exploiting our family relationship to gather intelligence that could be used to attack other military personnel and installations. How many other military families have been targeted through this kind of recruitment? I asked, beginning to understand that our family's situation might be part of a larger pattern of exploitation. We've identified at least 15 other cases where family members of military personnel have been recruited for intelligence gathering and potential attack operations, Colonel Williams replied. Your sister's case is the first where recruitment progressed to actual attack implementation, which is why stopping this package was so critical for our broader investigation. The scope of the terrorist network was larger and more sophisticated than anyone had initially understood. Emma's recruitment was part of a systematic program to identify and exploit American military families through relatives who had access to overseas locations and cultural expertise that made them valuable for intelligence operations. Your sister's case has provided crucial intelligence about recruitment methods, operational planning, and network structure that will help us identify and stop other family members who may have been recruited for similar purposes, Agent Chen explained as the investigation expanded to include other military families who might be at risk. But the most difficult aspect of the investigation was confronting the reality that Emma's transformation from loving sister to would-be assassin had been voluntary rather than coerced. The evidence suggested that she'd embraced radical ideology and actively chosen to participate in planning attacks against American military targets. Emma's communications with her terrorist contacts show enthusiasm for anti-American operations and specific interest in targeting military personnel, Colonel Williams reported after reviewing intercepted messages between Emma and her recruitment network. Her participation appears to have been ideologically motivated rather than coerced through threats or blackmail. The psychological evaluation of Emma's communications and behavior patterns suggested that her academic exposure to anti-American perspectives had evolved into genuine radicalization and commitment to terrorist goals that included killing American soldiers, including her own sister. Lieutenant Martinez, I know this is incredibly difficult to accept, but the evidence indicates that your sister genuinely intended to kill you as part of her commitment to terrorist operations against American military targets, Agent Chen said with the gentleness of someone delivering devastating news. The investigation was continuing to unfold, with implications for military security, counter-terrorism operations, and the safety of other military families who might be targeted through similar recruitment and exploitation schemes. But for me personally, the most important immediate question was whether Emma could be captured and brought to justice, or whether she would escape to continue planning attacks against other American military personnel and their families. We are coordinating with international law enforcement agencies to locate and apprehend your sister before she can carry out additional attacks, Colonel Williams assured me. Her intelligence value and operational involvement make her a high-priority target for capture and prosecution. The investigation that had begun with a suspicious birthday package was expanding into a major counter-terrorism operation that could prevent future attacks while holding accountable the people, including my own sister, who'd been planning to murder American soldiers in the name of radical ideology. The international manhunt for Emma concluded 3 weeks later when Turkish authorities, working with FBI counter-terrorism agents, arrested her at a safe house in Istanbul where she'd been planning additional attacks against American military facilities and personnel throughout the region. Your sister was captured along with 5 other individuals who were part of the terrorist cell responsible for recruiting American military family members for intelligence gathering and attack operations, Agent Chen informed me during a secure video call from the base communication center. The arrest had yielded significant intelligence about the terrorist network's operations, including detailed plans for attacks against multiple American bases, lists of military families who'd been targeted for recruitment, and evidence of previous successful intelligence gathering operations that had compromised American military security. Emma was not just a recruited asset, Agent Chen continued. She was a key operational planner, who was developing attack strategies specifically designed to exploit her knowledge of American military families and their access to sensitive information about base operations. The evidence recovered from Emma's safe house included detailed maps of American military installations, personnel rosters that included names and addresses of military families, and communications with terrorist operatives discussing optimal timing and methods for attacks designed to maximize casualties among American military personnel. But the most devastating revelation was Emma's recorded confession, made to Turkish authorities after her arrest, where she detailed her voluntary participation in planning attacks against American military targets, including specific discussions about killing me and other military personnel at my base. "I want to watch the confession," I told Agent Chen, knowing that hearing Emma's explanation would be painful but necessary for understanding how completely she'd betrayed our family and our country. The confession video showed Emma sitting calmly in an interrogation room, speaking clearly and rationally about her decision to join terrorist operations against American military targets. There was no evidence of coercion, mental illness, or manipulation that might explain her transformation from loving sister to would-be terrorist. "I became convinced that American military operations in the Middle East were causing more harm than good," Emma said during her recorded statement, "and I decided that the most effective way to stop American aggression was to target military personnel and their families in ways that would force American withdrawal from the region." Her voice was steady and unemotional as she described planning my assassination as part of a broader strategy to demoralize American military families and reduce support for overseas military operations. Sarah represented everything wrong with American military involvement in regional conflicts, Emma continued in the confession. She was participating in operations that were harming local populations, and her death would send a message to other military families about the consequences of supporting American aggression. The casual way Emma discussed murdering her own sister, as a political statement, was more shocking than the terrorist recruitment itself. She'd apparently convinced herself that killing me was morally justified as part of her opposition to American foreign policy. "I knew exactly how to target Sarah because I had detailed information about her base's security procedures, mail delivery protocols, and personnel schedules," she admitted, explaining how she'd used family communications to gather intelligence for attack planning. The confession revealed that Emma had been providing terrorist organizations with detailed information about American military families for over 8 months, contributing to intelligence databases that were being used to plan multiple attacks against military personnel and their relatives. My academic research provided perfect cover for gathering intelligence about American military operations while building relationships with people who shared my commitment to stopping American aggression through direct action, Emma explained, using academic language to describe terrorist recruitment and operational planning. But the most disturbing aspect of her confession was Emma's complete lack of remorse or regret about attempting to murder family members in service of her radical political beliefs. "I don't regret trying to kill Sarah," she stated clearly, "because military personnel who participate in American overseas operations are legitimate targets for resistance, regardless of family relationships or personal connections." The ideology that had motivated Emma's transformation was comprehensive and uncompromising, viewing American military personnel as acceptable casualties in a broader conflict against American foreign policy, even when those personnel were her own family members. Your sister's confession confirms that her radicalization was complete and voluntary, Agent Chen explained after I'd finished watching the recording. She genuinely believes that killing American military personnel, including you, is morally justified and politically necessary. The psychological evaluation of Emma's confession suggested that her academic exposure to critical perspectives on American foreign policy had evolved into genuine terrorist ideology that justified violence against American military targets, including family members who served in the military. Emma's case represents a concerning trend where academic criticism of American foreign policy can evolve into terrorist recruitment and operational participation when individuals become exposed to radical networks that exploit existing political dissatisfaction, explained Dr. Michael Torres, a psychologist specializing in radicalization and terrorist recruitment patterns. The implications for military families were significant, as Emma's case demonstrated how relatives with academic or professional access to overseas locations could be targeted for recruitment by terrorist organizations seeking to exploit family relationships for intelligence gathering and attack planning. We are implementing new security protocols for military families that include monitoring and support for relatives who may be exposed to radicalization through academic, professional, or travel activities in regions where terrorist recruitment is active, Colonel Williams announced as part of the military's response to lessons learned from Emma's case. But for me personally, the most important outcome was knowing that Emma would face justice for her terrorist activities, while the intelligence from her capture would help protect other military families from similar recruitment and attack attempts. Your sister will be extradited to the United States to face federal terrorism charges that carry potential life sentences, Agent Chen informed me. Her cooperation with the investigation could reduce her sentence, but her operational involvement and planning of attacks against American military targets will result in significant prison time regardless of her cooperation level. The sister who'd tried to kill me with a birthday bomb would spend the rest of her life in prison, while the intelligence from her capture would help prevent other American military families from experiencing the betrayal and danger that her terrorist recruitment had created. 6 months after Emma's arrest, I found myself sitting in a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., watching my sister face trial for terrorism, conspiracy to commit murder, and providing material support to terrorist organizations. The woman who'd grown up in our military family, who'd shared birthdays and holidays and family traditions, was now being prosecuted as an enemy of the United States. The defendant, Emma Martinez, voluntarily joined a terrorist organization and actively participated in planning attacks against American military personnel, including her own sister, announced Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Walsh during her opening statement. This case represents the ultimate betrayal of family, country, and the values that our military families sacrifice to defend. The trial proceedings were emotionally devastating as prosecutors presented evidence of Emma's systematic intelligence gathering, her voluntary recruitment by terrorist organizations, and her specific planning of attacks designed to kill American soldiers, including me. Emma's defense attorney attempted to argue that she'd been manipulated and exploited by sophisticated terrorist recruiters who'd taken advantage of her academic naivety and political idealism. But the evidence of her voluntary participation and enthusiastic commitment to terrorist operations made manipulation claims difficult to sustain. Ms. Martinez wasn't a naive academic who was tricked into terrorist activity, Prosecutor Walsh argued, presenting recordings of Emma's communications with terrorist operatives. She was an active and willing participant who used her family connections to gather intelligence and plan attacks against American military targets. The evidence included detailed correspondence between Emma and terrorist leaders, where she discussed optimal strategies for targeting military families, expressed enthusiasm about killing American soldiers, and provided specific intelligence about base security procedures that could be used for attack planning. My testimony as a prosecution witness was the most difficult thing I'd ever done. I had to describe Emma's systematic intelligence gathering through family communications, explain how she'd exploited our relationship to gain access to sensitive information about military operations, and confirmed that the explosive device she'd sent would have killed me and potentially dozens of other military personnel if it had been opened as intended. Lieutenant Martinez, did you suspect that your sister was gathering intelligence for terrorist purposes when she asked questions about your military service? Prosecutor Walsh asked during my direct examination. No, I replied, looking directly at Emma as I testified. I thought she was interested in my work because she cared about me and wanted to understand what I was doing overseas. I never imagined she was collecting information to help terrorist organizations attack American soldiers. Emma's reaction to my testimony was stone-faced and unemotional. She showed no remorse, no regret, and no recognition that her actions had caused profound pain and betrayal to family members who'd loved and trusted her. Did you love your sister, Lieutenant Martinez? The prosecutor continued. Yes, I loved her completely and trusted her without reservation, I replied, my voice breaking as I spoke about the relationship that Emma had exploited and destroyed through her terrorist activities. And how do you feel about her attempt to kill you with an explosive device disguised as a birthday gift? I feel betrayed, devastated, and grateful to be alive, I answered honestly. The person I loved and trusted tried to murder me in service of an ideology that views American military personnel as acceptable targets, even when those targets are family members. Emma's defense presentation attempted to portray her as a victim of sophisticated manipulation rather than a willing terrorist operative. Her attorney argued that academic exposure to critical perspectives on American foreign policy had made her vulnerable to exploitation by terrorist recruiters who'd gradually radicalized her worldview. Emma Martinez was a brilliant young woman whose intellectual curiosity and genuine concern for social justice made her susceptible to manipulation by people who exploited her idealism for terrorist purposes, defense attorney Michael Rodriguez argued. She was groomed and manipulated by experienced terrorist operatives who took advantage of her academic research and political concerns. But the prosecution's evidence of Emma's voluntary and enthusiastic participation in terrorist operations contradicted claims of manipulation and exploitation. Her recorded communications showed clear understanding of terrorist goals, active participation in planning attacks against American targets, and specific enthusiasm about killing military personnel. The defendant's own words demonstrate that her terrorist activities were voluntary and ideologically motivated, Prosecutor Walsh argued during closing statements. She wasn't manipulated or exploited. She was recruited because her anti-American beliefs and access to military intelligence made her a valuable asset for terrorist operations. The jury deliberated for 3 days before returning guilty verdicts on all charges: terrorism, conspiracy to commit murder, providing material support to terrorist organizations, and espionage. The evidence of Emma's voluntary participation and specific planning of attacks against American military targets had been overwhelming and undeniable. Emma Martinez, you have been found guilty of terrorist activities that represent the ultimate betrayal of family, country, and the values that define American society, Judge Patricia Chen announced during sentencing. Your actions endangered the lives of military personnel who served to protect the freedoms that allowed you to pursue your education and express your political views. You are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, Judge Chen continued. Your terrorist activities and attempt to murder your own sister represent crimes so serious that rehabilitation is not possible and public safety requires permanent incarceration. The life sentence ensured that Emma would never again have the opportunity to participate in terrorist activities or harm American military personnel. But for me, the most important outcome was knowing that justice had been served while the intelligence from her case would help protect other military families from similar recruitment and betrayal. As Emma was led away in handcuffs to begin her life sentence, she turned to look at me one final time. Her expression showed no remorse, no regret, and no recognition of the pain her terrorist activities had caused to family members who'd loved her unconditionally. The sister I'd grown up with was gone, replaced by a terrorist whose ideology valued killing American soldiers more than maintaining family relationships or honoring the values that had shaped our childhood. 2 years after Emma's conviction and life sentence, I've been promoted to captain and transferred to a new assignment in military intelligence, where my experience with terrorist recruitment and family exploitation has become valuable for protecting other military families from similar threats. My work now involves identifying and investigating cases where terrorist organizations might be attempting to recruit military family members for intelligence gathering or attack operations. The lessons learned from Emma's case have helped develop screening procedures and warning systems that protect military families from exploitation by people who would use family relationships for terrorist purposes. Captain Martinez, your experience with family-based terrorist recruitment has been invaluable for understanding how these operations work and how we can prevent them, said Colonel Jennifer Walsh, my new commanding officer at the Defense Intelligence Agency. Your insights have helped us identify and stop at least 12 other recruitment attempts targeting military families. The counterterrorism work I'm doing now feels like the most important assignment of my military career. Preventing other families from experiencing the betrayal and danger that Emma's terrorist recruitment created gives meaning to the painful experience while protecting fellow service members from similar threats. The psychological impact of Emma's betrayal required extensive counseling and therapy to process the trauma of learning that a beloved family member had tried to murder me in service of terrorist goals. The therapy helped me understand that Emma's choices were her own responsibility and not a reflection of failure by our family or our military community. You couldn't have prevented Emma's radicalization because she deliberately concealed her changing beliefs while exploiting your love and trust, explained Dr. Sarah Kim, the military psychologist who helped me work through the emotional aftermath of Emma's terrorist activities. Her betrayal was calculated and systematic, not something you could have detected or stopped through different family interactions. My parents have struggled even more than I have with accepting Emma's transformation from accomplished graduate student to convicted terrorist. Their grief over losing both daughters, one to terrorism and one to the military assignment that keeps me overseas, has required their own counseling and support systems. We failed Emma somehow, my mother said during one of our video calls, still trying to find explanations for how their daughter became someone who would try to kill her own sister. We must have missed warning signs or failed to provide guidance that would have prevented her radicalization. Mom, Emma made her own choices, I replied, using language I'd learned through therapy and experience. She had the same upbringing, the same values, and the same family support that I did. Her radicalization was her personal decision, not a failure of our family or our parenting. The process of rebuilding trust in family relationships and personal connections has been gradual but important for my continued service and personal well-being. The betrayal by someone I'd loved unconditionally taught me valuable lessons about the difference between healthy caution and paralyzing suspicion. Learning to trust again after family betrayal requires recognizing that Emma's choices don't reflect the character of other family members or the possibility of building meaningful relationships, Dr. Kim explained during our sessions. Her terrorist activities were aberrant behavior, not evidence that all close relationships are potential security threats. The new relationships I've developed with fellow service members, particularly those who've experienced their own family challenges and betrayals, have provided support networks that understand the unique pain of being targeted by people who should have been protectors and allies. Captain Martinez, your experience with family terrorist recruitment gives you credibility when you're training other military families about security awareness, said Major Robert Chen, who supervises my current counterterrorism training programs. People trust your warnings because they know you've personally experienced the consequences of family exploitation. The training programs I've developed help military families recognize warning signs of terrorist recruitment attempts while maintaining healthy family relationships, that aren't poisoned by excessive suspicion or security paranoia. The goal is teaching families to be aware of concerning behavior changes without becoming so suspicious that they destroy normal family bonds, I explained during training sessions. Emma's case was extreme and unusual, but the warning signs she displayed can help other families recognize when relatives might be being recruited for anti-American activities. The most meaningful aspect of my current work is corresponding with military families who've used my training materials and warning signs to identify and stop terrorist recruitment attempts targeting their own relatives. Captain Martinez, your training helped us recognize that our son's college roommate was trying to recruit him for intelligence gathering about our military service, wrote Major Patricia Rodriguez, whose family had attended one of my security awareness presentations. Without your specific warnings about academic recruitment methods, we might not have realized the danger until it was too late. The intelligence work I'm doing has also contributed to broader understanding of how terrorist organizations exploit American academic institutions and overseas study programs to identify and recruit military family members who have access to sensitive information about military operations. Captain Martinez's case study of her sister's recruitment has become required reading for counterterrorism analysts because it demonstrates how sophisticated these recruitment operations can be, explained Dr. Michael Torres, a counterterrorism researcher who studies family-based terrorist recruitment patterns. The research based on Emma's case has led to policy changes in how military families are screened and supported when relatives are engaged in overseas academic or professional activities that might expose them to terrorist recruitment attempts. Military families now receive specific guidance about security awareness when relatives are traveling or studying in regions where terrorist recruitment is active, said General Jennifer Walsh, who oversees military family security programs. Captain Martinez's experience showed us gaps in our security awareness that needed to be addressed. But the most important outcome of Emma's betrayal and conviction has been my own growth as a military officer and counterterrorism professional who can use personal experience to protect other families from similar threats. Emma's life sentence ensures she'll never again have the opportunity to harm American military personnel, but her case continues to provide valuable intelligence about terrorist recruitment methods and operational planning that helps protect military families from exploitation. Your sister's terrorist activities caused tremendous personal pain, Colonel Walsh acknowledged during my recent performance review, but your response to that betrayal has made you one of our most effective counterterrorism officers and family security trainers. The woman who tried to kill me with a birthday bomb gave me the experience and credibility necessary to protect other military families from terrorist recruitment and attack attempts. Her betrayal, while devastating personally, became the foundation for military service that has helped save lives and strengthen national security. As I continue my military career, I carry the knowledge that family relationships require both trust and awareness, that love doesn't guarantee loyalty, and that the people closest to us can sometimes pose the greatest threats to our safety and security. But I also know that Emma's choices were hers alone, that most family members would never betray their military relatives for terrorist purposes, and that building meaningful relationships requires accepting reasonable risks while maintaining appropriate security awareness. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely was working against you in ways you never imagined possible? Sometimes the people we love most are the ones positioned to cause the most damage when their loyalties shift to dangerous ideologies or enemy organizations. What would you have done if you'd received a package like Emma's bomb? Would you have opened it immediately, or would you have been suspicious enough to seek help first? I'm curious about your thoughts on balancing family trust with security awareness, especially in situations where personal relationships intersect with professional responsibilities. The hardest part of this experience wasn't the physical danger. It was accepting that someone I'd loved unconditionally had tried to kill me in service of a terrorist organization. But ultimately, Emma's betrayal taught me valuable lessons about the difference between love and loyalty, and helped me develop skills that now protect other military families from similar threats. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and share your own experiences with family betrayal, security awareness, or discovering that people you trusted were working against your interests in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal safety? Your stories help others who might be facing similar situations. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life military stories, family betrayal revelations, and the complex dynamics that happen when personal relationships intersect with national security concerns. Ring that notification bell so you never miss updates about counterterrorism, military family experiences, and learning to balance trust with security awareness. Please share this video with anyone who needs to hear that betrayal by loved ones, while devastating, can become the foundation for protecting others from similar experiences. Sometimes the most painful personal experiences become the most valuable professional capabilities. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, trust should be given thoughtfully rather than blindly. Love doesn't guarantee loyalty, and the people who betray us often provide the experience necessary to protect others from similar betrayals. Until next time, keep serving with honor, keep protecting your fellow service members, and keep believing that most family relationships are sources of strength rather than threats to security. The few who betray that trust shouldn't prevent us from building meaningful connections with the many who deserve our confidence and love.